Welcome dear students to the biology class. Today we shall be dealing with biodiversity and its conservation, a very important chapter for you. Let us come to biodiversity. What is biodiversity? Biodiversity is defined as the variability among living organisms from all sources, including terrestrial, marine and other aquatic ecosystems, and the ecological complexes of which they are part. This includes diversity within species, between species and of ecosystems. But if we say this in simple terms, it is the totality of genes, species and ecosystems. If we shall further simplify it, we shall see this is the various types of organisms found on the earth system. We shall say that includes all the plants, all the animals, all the microbes, or we shall say all the living organisms. You know, living organisms of one species making population, of several species making communities, they live in a definite area at a definite time and make ecosystems, and these ecosystems are inhabited by one or several types of living organisms, and all these in toto is referred to as biodiversity. The term biodiversity is coined by Walter Rosen. Biodiversity includes three interrelated hierarchical levels. That includes actually genetic diversity. By genetic diversity, we understand each organism, each species has its own gene pool. An individual of a particular species may differ from another of the same population, maybe in few genes. So, if we see individuals of the same species from different areas, they may possess different types of genes, that is the diversity among the similar species. So, a single species might show high diversity at the genetic level over its distribution range. If we look to the Indian context, India has more than 50,000 genetically different strains of rice, varieties of rice. Rice is same Oryza sativa, but if we see variety may look alike, but if we see them genetically, there are about 50,000 plus genetically different strains. In Koraput of Odisha, which is considered as one of the possible origin of rice center, is also having more than 250 varieties presently. Similarly, if we consider about the mango, there are 1,000 varieties of mangoes in India. Then in the next hierarchy comes the species. After the genes, we shall come to the species. Diversity at specific level or at the species level is like, one example I can give you, the Western Ghats have more amphibian species diversity than the Eastern Ghats. So, we shall see a particular group of organism in a particular region that may show diversity from the other part showing the same species. Third is the ecological diversity. Here we shall consider like desert. Desert is showing a type of diversity among its plants and animals, flora and fauna. Rainforest, mangroves, coral reefs, wetlands, estuaries, alpine meadows and all types of ecological diversity. Here we shall see these are distinct ecosystems and each of them is specialized with one or two types of diversity. According to the International Union for Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources, the total number of plants and animal species described so far is about 1.5 millions, but scientists say still many species are yet to be discovered and described and named. And out of these 1.5 millions of species which are already been described, more than 70% of these are animals, while rest of them are plants. If we tell about the plants, they include again algae, fungi, bryophytes, pteridophytes, gymnosperms and angiosperms. Among the animals, what are been identified and recorded till date, 70% of these are insects. If we go to the plants and particularly the fungi, the number of fungi species in the world is more than the combined total of species of fishes, amphibians, reptiles and mammals. So, we get a variety of fungi. If we consider India, India is one of the 12 mega diversity countries of the world. If we say the total biodiversity of the world, India is one of the important ones, although India covers about 2.4% of the total land area of the world, it has got about 8.1% of the total global species biodiversity. We say there are about 45,000 species of plants, about 90,000 to 1 lakh species of animals in India. Still many new species are yet to be discovered and named. Applying Robert May's global estimate, only 20% of the total species are been recorded by now. India has probably more than 1 lakh species of plants, 3 lakh species of animals to be discovered and described. Then we shall come to the pattern of biodiversity. We shall take the latitudinal gradient. If we consider the globe, take a latitude, go from 0 towards the pole or from the equator to the poles, we shall see diversity of flora and fauna, diversity of plants and animals. Diversity of plants and animal is not uniform throughout the world and shows uneven distribution. This distribution pattern is along the latitudinal gradient in diversity. Species diversity decreases as we move from the tropics towards the poles. In tropics, we have a definite pattern of rainfall, and the rainfall and other aspects of the environment enable growth of more types of plants and animals, but once we go up and up towards the poles, we shall find the climatic condition becomes harsh and toward the pole where the sub-zero temperature condition comes, biodiversity is minimal ones. If we go to the Amazonian rainforest, that is the greatest biodiversity on the earth, and everyone remembers Amazon because there is a threat to the Amazon forest today. It has more than 40,000 species of plants, 1,25,000 species of insects, 300 species of fish, 427 of amphibians and 378 of reptiles, 1,300 species of birds and 427 of mammals. Various hypotheses has been proposed regarding this, like speciation. Speciation is a function of time. Unlike temperate regions subjected to frequent glaciation in past, tropical latitudes have remained relatively undisturbed for millions of years, and in course of long evolutionary time, this species diversification has taken place. This is the reason I told you, when we go from the tropics to the poles, we shall see the diversity is less and less. This is the reason, because the tropics is more stable than the temperate regions. Then we shall go to the second aspect. The tropical environments, unlike temperate ones, are less seasonal and more constant and predictable, which promote niche specialization and lead to greater species diversity. The third aspect of this is there is more solar energy available, and in the tropics, which contribute higher productivity, in turn contributes indirectly to greater diversity. When there is more plants are produced, primary producers are there, then there will be equally distributed are the animals which will feed upon them, and if we just put the 10% rule, we shall see more and more animals can be sustained by more primary producers in a particular area. Then the second aspect is the species area relationship. Alexander von Humboldt has observed that within a region, species richness gets increased when explored area is increased, but only up to a limit. Then we shall come to the importance of species diversity to the ecosystem. The communities with more species are generally more stable than those with less species. A stable community should not show too much of variation in productivity from year to year. We shall see the net production of stable communities with a lot of diversity among their species will have little variation in their production that actually fits the fauna. So, we shall get rich biodiversity in this. Rich biodiversity is essential for ecosystem health and imperative for the very survival of human race in this planet. We may see what actually contributes to this. If we consider a forest ecosystem, it provides of resources to all the three basic needs of human, like it provides food, it provides part of the shelter we want. Okay. So, the timber, the firewood, the fibers, etc., and then the clothing, the fibers includes in that. A very interesting Rivet Popper hypothesis was given by Pop Ehrlich. Commonly we say this as rivet, actually this is rivet. It is having two components, the rivet and the popper. When they are fixed like nuts and bolts, it will be very tightly fixing two components of any instrument, a mechanical device, anything. Paul has considered the ecosystem as an aeroplane, and in an aeroplane all parts are joined together using thousands of rivets. He considered the species as the rivets. Rivets are joined with the poppers. Okay. So, we shall say if every passenger traveling in a aeroplane starts popping a rivet to take home. So, suppose 100 passengers are traveling in one aeroplane, each of the passenger is taking 4 to 5 rivets out of the system, then taking them home. What is going to happen? Suppose some people opened a window. If one window is lost, what will happen to a flying aeroplane in the sky? Suppose a wing is taken out, what is going to happen to that? Can it fly? Similarly, if we are taking one by one species out of this system, okay, from this aeroplane ecosystem, then it will so happen that it not only affect the flight safety, proper functioning of the ecosystem, but initially, but subsequently it will be dangerously weak over a period of time, and the plane will not be fly worthy or the ecosystem may fail. From this we can understand that what is the importance of species diversity. If the biodiversity is coming down, the primary productivity will come down, and ultimately animal diversity will also be affected, and cybernetics self regulation process will be affected, and ultimately there may be collapse of the ecosystem. Then we shall consider about the loss of biodiversity. The biological wealth of our planets have been declining rapidly due to three factors. As we have found out, this is one is the population, second is urbanization, and third is industrialization. With increase in population, we require more areas for our habitation. For that, more cultivated area, more cropland has to be created, and this cropland has to be created either from marshy, natural marshy land, or they are to be cut off from the forest land. And you see, when we take out a forest, a part of a forest, what is going to happen to its biodiversity? Urbanization. With increase in urbanization in today's society, we shall see more and more cropland and more forest land, more and more water bodies are being sacrificed. This has also contributed to rapid fall in biodiversity. Without industries, we cannot survive in this modern world, but industrialization has also a great impact on the loss of biodiversity, because industrialization also affects the water bodies, the forest, and all other natural ecosystems. The International Union for Conservation of Nature has published a red list in 2004. This document reads about the extinction of about 784 species, which includes 338 vertebrates, 359 invertebrates, 87 plants in the last 500 years. Some examples of recent extinctions include dodo from Mauritius, quagga from Africa, thylacine from Australia, sea cow from Russia, and 3 subspecies of tigers from Bali, Java, and Caspian region. In last 20 years, 27 species have been disappeared. You see, these are very much observed by us, recorded by us. You think of the number of species that might have been extincted, which we have neither recorded nor we can see them in our naked eyes. In general, we shall say loss of biodiversity in a region may lead to 3 important impacts. One is decline in plant production. You know, plants are the primary producers. Once they make the organic matter, that organic matter is utilized by the subsequent nutrient levels by the animal communities. Once there is decline in plant production, ultimately the animals will not get food and their population will also fall. When a plant produces carbohydrate, in the process it produces oxygen, which is very essential for the minimum survival of all the animals, because plants can survive with carbon dioxide and produce oxygen, but animals can use only oxygen and produce carbon dioxide, cannot produce oxygen from the carbon sources we take. The food we eat ultimately gives us carbon dioxide, but it cannot give us oxygen. The second is it lowers resistance to environmental disturbances, drought and flood. Every year we see more and more areas are coming under drought and flood. Sand level of different rivers have come up. We shall see the rivers are flowing above their normal level. There is large scale soil erosion. The drains, the trenches, the streams and these rivers are lost their depth, and whatever water is coming, that causes inundation and flood. The third important aspect is increased variability in ecosystem processes. If we see the ecosystem, these are self-sustained units. They produce their own food, they use the water, use the nutrients available, they have their own disease cycles, pests, they regulate their own numbers. There is a cybernetic self-regulation process within them that regulates their number so that they become self-sustained. So, increased variability in ecosystem processes like productivity, water use and pest use, disease cycles etc., ultimately are affected. Then if we come to the causes of biodiversity losses, we have to see several reasons. The faster rate of species extinctions are largely due to human activities. We shall always say due to the human activities only or due to human interference and intervention, there is loss of biodiversity. You might have seen the animals like the elephants. Elephants are never remaining consistent in an area. You always listen about these elephant corridors. They move from one place, goes on and then come back to their starting point. Why they do? They require a lot of food for their survival. So, the group will move, go on eating in the way in their corridor and come back again. Once they are coming back, the plants are regenerated and that can sustain them. But if you consider the human, they will go on destroying in a way that can never be revived. If we fell 20 trees to build a bungalow over an area, we cannot revive back these trees. So, ultimately the animals living on them, the birds feeding on them has to move somewhere else. We say there is an evil quarter, 4 major causes that actually causes biodiversity losses. First, we shall discuss about habitat destruction and fragmentation. It is the most important cause of animals and plants extinction. The Amazon rainforest, which we refer to as the lungs of the planet, having millions of species, is being cut and cleared for cultivation of crop plants and for conversion of these areas to grasslands, so that fodder will be available from there. When large habitats are broken up into small fragments due to different human activities, mammals, birds requiring large territories migrate and ultimately affected very badly. Then the second aspect is poaching and overexploitation. Poaching or overexploitation to a biological system is never good for the keeping up of biodiversity. It results in degradation and extinction of the resources. Passenger pigeon, Steller sea cow, many marine fish population are over harvested and ultimately they have lost their existence. Alien species invasion. When some species are not indigenous to a place, we say them to be alien species. when alien species come from another area and come over to our area and settles here, they damage the indigenous species and ultimately they settle that into that. Well, the fourth point we shall discuss is co-extinction. When a particular species becomes extinct, whether it is a plant or animal species, all the species which were dependent on this particular species which has been extincted will also become extinct. Suppose we consider a fish species. There are several parasites growing inside them, several microbes growing in them specifically with this, like the obligate parasites. So, once that species is extincted, all these which are dependent on them are extincted. So, that is referred to as co-extinction. In addition to these four, we shall see the pollution, the global climatic changes, they have also a toll on the biodiversity. So, after these, now let us come to the conservation of biodiversity. By now, we have studied about what is biodiversity, what is importance of biodiversity and how the biodiversity is lost. So, once we know it is very important to conserve the biodiversity, we have to think seriously about it and take decisions. So, the scientists, common man, politicians, everyone in the world are now conscious of conservation of biodiversity. We should conserve the biodiversity due to two reasons, important ones. The narrowly utilitarian, human beings obtain countless direct economic benefits from nature like food, firewood, fibers. These three along with the construction material will contribute to the three basic needs of human being for their survival like food, shelter and clothing. In addition to that, for their well-being, medicine is taken from medicinal plants and industrial products are been also happening, taking raw materials from them. With increasing resources put into the bioprospecting nations, and bioprospecting nations endowed with rich biodiversity can expect to reap enormous benefit. What I understand by bioprospecting is searching for plants and animals for their medicinal value. You know, as per our Charak of ancient times, there is no plant in the world without medicinal importance. So, if we go on searching for active ingredients present in plants which contribute to the medicines, active ingredients found from animals which contribute to the medicine, then those countries which are having rich biodiversity are going to be largely benefited, but simultaneously there will be a toll on the biodiversity. So, what we have to do is that if we have this narrowly utilitarian setup, then we have to conserve the biodiversity and go on reaping the benefits. Similarly, the second one is the broadly utilitarian one. Biodiversity plays a major role in ecosystem services that nature provides: production, supply of oxygen produced during the process of photosynthesis, pollination without natural pollinators, and finally, the aesthetic sense. From aesthetic sense, we shall say pleasure from nature, which is priceless. This actually makes us to think very seriously to conserve the biodiversity. How can we contribute to the conservation of biodiversity. So, what are the different methods we shall be adopting in conservation of biodiversity? This we shall discuss under two headings. One is in situ or on-site conservation. That is, suppose we say a plant is growing in a particular area in a forest of Odisha, not in the forests of Chhattisgarh. So, we go on harvesting that particular plant. If we go on doing that, the plant may be extincted in some course of time. But once we know its importance, we have to conserve it, and that is specifically growing in a particular area, we have to protect it in its own natural habitat, so that it can be conserved. So, maximum protection of certain biodiversity hotspot regions are been chosen with very high level of species richness and high degree of endemism. Endemism is having plants and animals specific to that particular area. Species found in that region are not found elsewhere. So, they are to be conserved, and when we have a lot of species growing in a particular area, we refer them to be biodiversity hotspots. There are about 34 biodiversity hotspots in the world, and these hotspots are also regions accelerated habitat loss. India has 18 biosphere reserves, 19 national parks, and 448 wildlife sanctuaries, where we make an effort for on-site conservation of flora and fauna. Biodiversity is not evenly distributed on the earth. We shall find some areas having more concentration of living organisms, some areas are with minimum of living organisms. Such areas of rich biodiversity has been declared sensitive due to greater danger of direct or indirect human intervention, and these areas are referred to as the biodiversity hotspots. Like I have just discussed, so far in the world we have found out, or we have identified 34 biodiversity hotspots. So, biodiversity hotspots concept was given by Norman Mayers in 1998. Mayer has given this concept. Biodiversity hotspots have four main criteria. These are the number of species present, that depends upon the number of species present, number of endemic species present, the degree of threat they face in terms of loss of habitat, degree of exploitation, how much they are being exploited by the surrounding human populace. 25 biodiversity hotspots with about 1.4% of the earth's land have been identified. Most of these hotspots are in tropical areas, and in India we have two of these hotspots are located, one in Western Ghats and the other is the Eastern Himalayas up to the Myanmar. Then the biosphere reserves, like I have told you, the biosphere reserves, the national parks, etc., are been established for on-site conservation of biodiversity. So, biosphere reserves are areas of terrestrial and coastal ecosystems promoting solution to reconcile the conservation of biodiversity with its sustainable use. They are internationally recognized, nominated by national governments, and remains under sovereign jurisdiction of the states where they are located. The areas under the jurisdiction of India will have sovereignty over them, and they are having the responsibility of sustainable maintenance of these biosphere reserves. What we see actually in a particular season, fishermen are restricted entry into the ocean for fishing. This is just to enable the breeding season of the fishes to go smoothly. If we go and catch the breeders, then thousands of newborns are being sacrificed by a single attempt. So, we have to have sustainable methods of harvesting benefit from this and simultaneously conserve the biodiversity. The Indian government has established 18 biosphere reserves to protect larger areas of natural habitat than a typical national park or animal sanctuary. That includes one or more national parks or reserves along with buffer zones that are open to some economic uses. If we go to a biosphere reserve like the one in Odisha, the one in Mayurbhanj. So, what we see over there, first we shall see a buffer zone where tribal surrounding that particular area are allowed to take or make some economic events over there. They will go for some timber, they will go for some fuel wood, they can take out firewood from there, they can harvest other things, but they are not allowed to go into the core areas where it is restricted, so that animals and plants in the core area can sustain. So, Simlipal in Mayurbhanj, we have recently seen the activities. So, we can identify the core area, the buffer zone, etc. Then we shall come to the next is sacred groves and sacred lakes. Regions, religion and cultural belief is the ground in these cases. Near villages, we have sacred groves, we have plants or a small forest like thing developed, and this is dedicated to a deity of the small village or town, and nobody interferes with the plants and animals living over there. That enable protection of species over there and development of these sacred groves. Similarly, sacred lakes can promote this conservation of biodiversity. Then World Heritage Sites, 5 natural sites like the national parks, Kaziranga National Parks, Simlipal National Park, Leonardo Ghana National Park, Nanda Devi National Park, Sundarban National Parks, etc. in India are there, which are the sites to adore, and these heritage sites have the potency for conservation of natural resources and conservation of the biodiversity. Then we shall come to the ex situ or the off-site conservation. In this method, threatened animals and plants are taken out from their natural habitat and placed in special settings where they will be protected and given special care. So, we go to a forest, see that particular plants are under threat, particular animals are under threat, very few of them have survived from over exploitation. Then we shall take them, some of them, to our research laboratories for further propagation of these plants or further breeding of these animals, then grow them in introduced zoological parks or botanical gardens. We say this to be off-site conservation. Zoological parks, or we shall say the zoos, are places where we keep animals and try to breed them and the endangered species. By following different scientific methods, we could keep them up. Similarly, we have large botanical gardens created, and we are able to maintain the purity of, we conserve some of the species in these particular botanical gardens, taking the plants from their natural habitat. But by keeping them over here, if there at any time of time there is complete loss of this diversity, then we shall be able to use these resources. There is scientific preservation of propagules also. If there is cold or low temperature treatment in preserving this is referred to as cryopreservation. Able to preserve the viable and fertile gametes inside cold rooms, so that they can be subsequently used for propagation of these germ lines. Well, we were discussing about the off-site conservation. Here we use the scientific knowledge, the researcher's role in conservation of species out of their habitat in controlled conditions. We have zoological parks where there is captive breeding of animals and bird species, by which actually we have saved several species from near extinction, and now their number is growing. Similarly, we have botanical gardens where we bring plants from threatened environment and grow them. We try to maintain pure stocks and breeds of these particular species, so that that can be used for future researches. We use cryopreservation techniques, by which we shall use very low temperature or freezing temperature, where cells can be protected or preserved. Plant tissues under tissue culture can be protected, can be kept under cryopreservation for long time. Then when need be, we can take them out, bring them under culture, then by micropropagation methods we are able to produce a number of offsprings from them. Similarly, we are able to put the eggs, whether they are fertilized or unfertilized, sperms or gametes, in vitro, and we can also preserve them, and when need be, we can fertilize them and grow them. With surrogacy, we are able to develop new animals. Now, let us come to the last part with the threat to biodiversity. With the knowledge on our biodiversity, we come to a conclusion that there needs a very strong action on conservation of biodiversity. So, all the knowledge accumulated so far are being used, and the International Union for Conservation of Biodiversity, and now called the World Conservation Union, maintains a catalogue that is called as Red Data Book of Taxa that are facing the risk of extinction. So, scientists work very carefully on each of the species available. They see their population in the past, population at present, and assess how much threat this individual is facing for future, and this has been recorded. Its aim is to impart information about the urgency and scale of conservation problems to the public and policymakers. So, this list will be made available to the public, simultaneously to the policymakers or the politicians, administrators of nations in the world, so that they will be careful and they will take decisions on conservation of this biodiversity. There are 5 main objectives of the Red Data Book. First, it provides a global index of declined biodiversity. So, it provides a detailed account of what was the biodiversity, what is the biodiversity, how it is coming up, a detailed study of this, so that we shall be working on a particular species we are interested for, which is declining. The second aspect is identification and documentation of endangered species. What are endangered species? Those species whose number has depleted alarmingly, and if not protected, there may be threat of extinction. We refer them as endangered species. So, we have to identify and make a detailed documentation of these endangered species, details of these species, so that we can work on their conservation. Then the third aspect is to create awareness about the importance of threatened biodiversity. Until and unless we understand what good or bad impact we shall have by extinction of one or few species of plants and animals, we shall not work on to conserve the biodiversity. That is why we have to create awareness among the public, from the students, teachers to publics and policy makers. Then the fourth aspect is to highlight conservation priorities at the local level. This is most important. If we are not able to convince the tribals who lives very near to the forest, who are deriving benefits from the forest, they are living on the forest, but damaging the forest, until and unless we convince them with regard to sustainable management of this, and we do not make them a partner in management of the forest, then it is not going to make any solution. And the most important aspect about the Red Data Book is to provide information about international agreement like conservation of biodiversity sites. So, students, we have discussed some important aspects, not all, but many of the important aspects with regard to biodiversity and conservation of biodiversity. So, now I shall conclude with a brief review of what we have discussed. We have discussed about the biodiversity, that is the variability among the plants, animals and micro species available in the world. Then we shall see there may be genetic diversity, then there may be species diversity or diversity at the ecosystem or community level. Then we shall come to discuss about the essential of biodiversity. Biodiversity is very essential because it provides us the benefits in many ways. First, it provides us the organic matter, then it provides us all the essentials for the human living. for the human comfort. So, if a community is rich with variations, rich with diversity, that is a very healthy community. Then we shall see different methods of conservation of these. In situ conservation, the best way, because in these we allow the plants and animals to grow in their natural habitats, just we give them protection. We should not over exploit them, so that they will take the natural course and preserve themselves. Then we have also discussed about the ex situ conservation, where we shall take out these plants and animals from their natural habitat, and off-site we shall try to preserve them. Here we shall use the scientific knowledge, we shall use them to put up in the laboratories and conserve them for future. Thank you, students. We shall meet again with biology class subsequently. Thank you.